this section is the Women in Tech, and we have with us Sloan Johnson, Marilyn Allers, Rachel Payne, Maria Savando, and we have Miriam Baladil.
Good afternoon, everybody. Like Helena said, my name is Mariam. I'm Senior Analyst at the Economic Development Department. And like so many of you, my background includes entrepreneurship, education, and support. But today, I'm here in a supportive capacity. First of all, thank you all for being here. Thank you to the sponsors for helping make this wonderfully inspiring day happen. And of course, thank you to the BEDC for inviting me to join this awe-inspiring panel to guide the conversation. The BEDC has done an amazing job today, and like every day they do. And so thank you guys for making this happen. I noted today that we've seen so much overlap between technology and entrepreneurship. Technology is pervasive, and it's obviously here to stay. Oftentimes, it's a person's best friend, so we only have to harness it. We do, all of us, all genders, everyone. So today, let's talk about how some of us have, each on our own way, done just that, harness technology to make this world better. So I'll start with introductions. And I'll go around the screen. So Maria, why don't you introduce yourself? Give us your name, one thing that defines you the most, and then possibly one thing that many would not know about you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Maria Savando. I'm a strategic advisor for early stage blockchain-based companies. I'm based out of Miami, but I have clients worldwide. I have been in this space for a while now. I actually got it started in 2015, but prior to this, I used to be a PwC consultant focusing on IT governance and cybersecurity with the financial sector and working with major retail banks. One thing that has been consistent in my professional career is that I always love to support women and mentor women and encourage them to participate and get out of their comfort zones and experiment. And I did it before, I continue to do so, and will continue to do so forever, because I think women really do make a difference from the way they think. And sometimes we just need a little push to get started. One thing you may not know about me is that I am also a foodie. So I love to try out and cook very elaborate and complex meals. I actually have it as a personal goal of mine right now to go through a Mediterranean cookbook with my partner, and we just love to cook together. It's the best thing.
Sounds amazing. Thank you. Let's go around. Sloan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Sloan Johnson. I am a business analyst with the Economic Development Department and a serial entrepreneur. One thing that I would say defines me the most, actually, I consider myself to be a multi-potentialite, so I don't think there is any one thing that would define me as an individual. But one thing that most people don't know about me is that I crochet, like little old lady style crochet. Looking forward to the conversation today. Thanks.
I've seen some of those things. Sloan works magically with crochet. Marilyn.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you for having me. My name is Marilyn Allers. I am a software developer by day, and I am a pole dancer otherwise. So I own Aerial Therapy, which is a pole dance studio here in Bermuda. One thing that people don't know about me is that I have a day job and I run a business, both kind of full time. So yeah, I'm a mom, I'm a wife, love my family, love to travel. Yeah.
Thank you. Rachel?
Hi, I'm Rachel Payne. I'm a climate investor, and I've been in tech for about 20 years at entrepreneur-related roles, both co-founder and CEO, as well as on the executive team at large technology companies. I was on the founding team of Google.org, which was a $1 billion fund focused on climate change and global development. And I served 8 years at Google in a variety of capacities. More recently, I was at a private equity fund called Full Cycle, where I was leading ESG impact and deal sourcing. I also teach at UC Berkeley, And one thing that people probably don't know about me is that I ran for US Congress in the 2018 midterms. I didn't win those. That's why you don't know about me. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
That's amazing. So, Rachel, why would we stay with you? You're sitting here on the much awaited Women in Tech panel. So, why don't you tell me a little bit more about your career path and what led you to going into tech?
Throughout my career, I've been focused on positive systemic change, and that means really having an approach to intersectionality around how you think about impact, particularly from a gender lens. And one of the things that struck me early on, in fact, starting in my undergraduate, was the need to understand the issue of gender inequity from a variety of perspectives. So that's what I wrote my senior thesis on, and I won actually the award for best thesis. And it was looking at all the different forces that influence systemic bias and that put women in an unequal position. But it was interesting. I was planning to go into foreign policy. I was taking my foreign service exams, and then I just sort of randomly signed up for an interview with a tech company that was based out of the Bay Area, just out of curiosity. And it went so well, I made a sharp left in my career and I gave up foreign policy and immediately went into tech. And I actually think that that was one of the best decisions I ever made, because it meant that I could be on the ground floor in Silicon Valley when the internet was being born. And so that gave me an incredible experience. And of course, a wonderful place to explore entrepreneurship and to be part of a really exciting wave of innovation. Of course, you know, one of the challenges is being a woman in tech. You have to really develop thick skin, and it's not easy. And you have to fight for every gain that you have. And you have to really, try hard, persevere to maintain your position, because there's so much competition. And I remember after the 2008 economic crisis, all the people that would normally go into the financial services sector flooded Silicon Valley. And that's where the tech bro was born, because all the quant jocks who would normally go into Wall Street actually ended up in the Bay Area. And so it became even less diverse, and it became even more hostile to women. And so I've lived through a lot of waves of challenge in my career in technology, but I've always been passionate about innovation and, importantly, the role that technology can play in supporting people's lives and to leading to positive impact. Of course, it can also go the other way, as we've seen lately, particularly with what's going on with Facebook and the Senate hearings. But what I think is important to remember is that, technology itself isn't the challenge, it's who builds the technology. And if people who are creating the technology, particularly in my field in artificial intelligence, if the people creating it look the same and don't have diversity and are concentrated in only the most rarefied elite places, then they won't have the perspective to understand why other things matter, nor would they even know to consider factors outside of their lived experience. And so diversity is really at the core of what can make technology good and powerful and have a positive impact on the world. And it's the lack of diversity that often leads to many of the problems that we're seeing today. So I would say, for a lot of women, moving beyond being users of technology, whether you're using your mobile phone and, doing your social media posts or whatever, but move beyond that and think about being creators and inventors of technology, because we need more women at the table, at the ground floor, building that next generation of technology if we're ever going to get out of these issues that we're seeing today. Because what I know firsthand in some of the work I've done in my own startups is that the more you scale technology that's broken because of bias, the more that bias is ingrained in society, and the more it structurally grounds a lot of the technology that's built on top of it. So if you have structural bias that keeps getting reinforced and amplified because no one's addressing it, then it becomes even harder down the road to fix it later. So that's why we need more women and people of color and just people from all kinds of diverse backgrounds around the table building technology so that we can at least address some of the pitfalls and the ills that some technology has had on people all over the world. So that's my encouragement for more women to get involved and take action and start anywhere. You don't have to look a certain way, you don't have to follow a certain path, start anywhere, but become an inventor. I'm an inventor, and I proudly claim that, because inventors don't look like old white men in lab coats. They look like you and me. Thank you.
Absolutely. Claim it. Absolutely. You've earned it. Thank you for that. If I could just stay with you for one moment and talking about your pathway into technology, especially early on when you made that pivot, right, from foreign policy to technology. I wonder if you had the opportunity to have a support system around you. You know, we talked today and during the brunch on Sunday, we talked a lot about having your own tribe and having a tribe and culture and nurturing the people around you and being nurtured as well. So were you able to benefit from such relationships, you know, mentor-mentee relationships, or in any way have somebody that helped you, help guide you as you first were trying to find your way in tech?
I don't think anyone successful in business can say that they didn't get support. I feel incredibly fortunate for getting support, particularly when I was in environments that were not supportive. And, you know, and I can describe a wide variety of cases where that's true. But I had to build my own tribe. So it's not something that I, you know, inherited or came with. I mean, I was a woman in tech early in my career, and I didn't know exactly what that meant, but I knew I wanted to meet other amazing women. And so that was my starting point. And, you know, being young and in my 20s, the good news is I had a lot of time on my hands, so I definitely made a lot of effort to meet other women. And it was only later in my career, when I was at business school, when I was the president of Women in Management, which is one of the largest clubs at Stanford. And I was working on these groups, these women in management groups, where I was matchmaking women to come together and be like cohorts to help each other with career and other life-related issues. And it was in that peer mentoring environment that I realized how powerful peer mentoring is in general. And in fact, my WIM group continued to meet every month for the next 20 years. So these groups can be incredibly powerful, and they also can help you throughout the life of your career. And life, because, you know, we don't live in silos. So sometimes you have to make hard choices between what you're doing for your family, for yourself, or for your job. And I think having a peer mentoring group is probably one of the most valuable things I've ever done. Yes, I've had some support along the way from mentors in the office or outside of the office. And sometimes I've had some sponsors, which is rarer, but very important, which is, you know, the person who stands up for you when you're not in the room. Ideally, it's, you know, one of the top men in the company, because that's usually who's making the decision. But it's harder to find sponsors because it's not something culturally that as many people are aware of. But if you can develop a sponsorship relationship, sometimes that can be even more powerful than a mentor, because that's the person who advocates you when you're not there to advocate for yourself. So I have had the fortune of having that, you know, every so often in my career, but it's something you have to build as well. And same with mentoring. Sometimes you can have formal or informal mentoring relationships. I've had the benefit of having both, but that takes a lot of effort too. And it's something that you have to initiate and you have to develop and cultivate and really build on, because those relationships are important, but usually mentors are quite busy. So you really have to structure that relationship in a way that's mindful of their time, but also helps get to the insights and support that you really need, making sure that you're being targeted in how you utilize your mentor-mentee relationships. I've had the privilege of having both male and female mentors. And, you know, they're all great. Like, if you can have a strong mentoring relationship, I think that is not as important that it's gender based, but I do think it's important that you have someone who can relate to your journey as a woman. And so, you know, I don't think it's ever too early to start building your tribe. I also think it's a lifelong effort, and it's something that continually requires the investment of your time and attention.
Yeah, for sure. It's an effort, and you have to be very conscious about it, very deliberate about it, because as you're evolving through your life and through your career, you're not the same person you were 10 years ago. And so your needs are going to change and evolve alongside that. And so the relationship that you'll be seeking and the support that you're looking for very deliberately by being very choosy and picky will also change as well. And yeah, thank you for that, Rachel. And while we're talking about support, Sloan, today is the BEDC's annual celebration of women entrepreneurs. So with your technology background and your current activities in tech, you also define yourself as an entrepreneur. Earlier, you said serial entrepreneur, which I love. So can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So through my work with the Economic Development Department, we facilitate a lot of what we do revolves around technology education, awareness, digital citizenship, creating a technology aware community in order to advance our economic development portfolio. So that involves things like Girls in ICT Day, during which we celebrate the most inspiring women in ICT every year. We also have coding programs and other things like the Digital Leadership Conference that are focused for everyone, but there is a focus put on, or an emphasis put on, women and young women participants, because we want to make sure that girls understand that technology is not just a field for men, that girls are just as smart as boys, right? I am an entrepreneur. I do consider myself a serial entrepreneur because I can't keep still. So there's always something that is piquing my interest or something that I want to try. And I don't always succeed, but failure is a part of learning, right? And failure often leads to success. So ironically enough, my business that I run now has absolutely nothing to do with technology. It's a food-based business. I'm the owner of Bermuda Charcuterie, and I co-own a martial arts dojo with my husband. So neither one of those businesses is directly technology involved other than the e-commerce components, but technology literally guides the way we live our everyday lives. So if you want to place an order with Bermuda Charcuterie, you have to do it online. If you want to contact the dojo, most times a parent will do it online. So, we have these kids who, they're so creative and innovative. We have these young girls that really want to get involved in technology. They go through these STEAM and STEM programs at their schools, but they are set at the back because it seems to be a man's thing. It's a boy's thing. So we want to create spaces where those girls move to the front of the room and have a voice that's louder than any voice that they've ever heard before.
Thank you for that. Yeah. And may I just say, if you want, because you said if you wanted to place an order, you have to go online. And I could say if you wanted some software developed, you can go to Sloan because she's underselling herself severely. She's also a developer and quite a good one at that. So while we're still talking about entrepreneurship, Maria, when we spoke a few days ago, you mentioned the myriad opportunities for women to have access to capital in an unconventional way. Could you expand on that for the audience?
Absolutely. I think that as entrepreneurs, sometimes we struggle with the fact that with the statistics, women are not given the same amount of financing that men are. And even if they are given financing, it radically changes depending on what your ethnicity is. I personally work in Web3 technology, which incorporates cryptocurrencies and such. And forgive me in advance if some of these terms you may not know. If you don't know and you want to know more, you're welcome to connect with me, send me a message, and I'm happy to elaborate more. But I wanted to give a high level, just some brief points that I think could be useful for those of you that are looking for untraditional means of financing your startups. Most people strictly talk about angel investors and venture capital. Those are the most common because those are the traditional paths. But for those women that may not follow a traditional pursuit and they may not have had the great professional background that sometimes is required, but you still have the vision, the drive, the team, and everything else that you could possibly need to succeed, but you're just missing the financing, I ask you to look into this and consider the possibilities for you. Thanks to Web3 technology, we can tap into things that are called DAOs. They are decentralized autonomous organizations that are managed in a decentralized way and are usually approved by governance. And there are many different DAOs with many different visions. You may find one that aligns with your passion and your mission and may be able to tap into their funds, collaborating with them. If you are creative or artistically inclined, there are things called NFTs that you can create and monetize your creativity through collectives. And this will allow you to reduce the expenses that you need for marketing to promote yourself and those artistic things. There are liquidity mining protocols, which allow you to tap into different financial sources that you can basically build on from what you already own. If you know anything about Bitcoin and you have Bitcoin and you want to make more money using that, that's a way to tap into it. if you are protocols, have dedicated budgets for different initiatives, and you can apply to grants, and that could work with your mission. And lastly, if you are more confident and more experience in this space, you can also work on creating your own token with the assistance of professionals to make sure that you get some funding from a non-traditional route that is growing tremendously in this space. And I just want to say one more thing. I think that some women feel that it's going to be the exact same thing as the previous financing options that are available, that they're still going to get less money than what a male counterpart would. And I just want to say, in this new space, you can make moves anonymously and still advance your brand and get this it's a meritocracy. So if you develop and you build and you contribute and it's quality work, you are going to get paid and you're going to get funding for what you've done, not for what your gender is. So I highly encourage women to look into Web3, and happy to elaborate on this later on if this is a lot of words that you're not familiar with.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of knowledge you just dropped there, and I'm thankful to you for that. You might have to come back and drill in on some of these things. But while we're still in the early stages of this conversation, Marilyn, I want to hear from you. We've gotten to know each other a little bit because you were a panelist at the Tech Education Summit, and I think I asked you some of the same questions. And I think your answers are always beneficial. So this kind of builds on to what we've been talking about and what Rachel spoke about specifically about the tech industry being largely male-dominated. And so I would like to know your perspective on what's going on in Bermuda here. That's in terms of that's allowing women to support each other in this field, because my understanding is you for a long time you were the only one. And so how do you see it now that you've been here a while and in the tech industry a while, and how do you see it for Bermuda specifically?
Certainly. So I went to school for computer engineering. I didn't choose a specific major because I wanted to remain general. So I have experience in networking, hardware, software, and I love it all. I've enjoyed it all. But I chose software once I arrived in Bermuda. It's just a point of interest for me. And like Mariam said, I'm used to being the only one in the space, used to being the only woman, used to being the only Black woman in most of the spaces that I occupied throughout my career. Things have slowly changed as time has worn on, and forums like this help to, encourage people to get involved in the tech scene, not specifically development, but and throughout the course of my career, I've enjoyed working with a number of other women, other Black women as well, and it's always been amazing to me, why people shy away from these types of fields. We all have something to contribute, and I think Rachel hit on a lot of the points that I was thinking of. So I definitely agree. We all have something to contribute. Diversity is so important for all the reasons that were stated already. Yeah.
Absolutely right. At this stage, we do have, there are a few things I'd like to discuss, but if you guys are okay, I'd like to take a moment and ask Kalina if she sees any questions, any burning questions from the audience that she would like to provide to us here as a matter of priority before we go back to the discussion.
So far, there have been no questions, just some really great comments. I don't know if you want me to read a couple of them. But yeah, we'll still encourage people to put some questions in the Q&A section at the bottom of the screen. You want me to read some of these, or you want to continue with your session? Do it at the end.
Okay, so you can read one or two and then we'll continue.
Okay, all right. So we have, yes, peer mentoring can be a great experience when the parameters are clearly defined. Peer mentorship is a great suggestion. I second searching and building sponsorship relationships in your industry.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for that.
All right.
All right, we'll continue on then. And from now on, I encourage you ladies to just kind of jump in. We've gotten to know you guys and been doing a bit. So I'll just ask the questions. So for instance, one is there is no single way to be an active, successful, inspiring female in tech. We've touched on it a bit, but can you guys just kind of mention how did you get here? And we talked briefly about having it all when we were still getting ready for today. But can somebody, Maria, possibly Rachel, Marilyn, and Sloan, can you add to this?
I can start, I guess. My start in tech was, I guess, just like everybody else's. I went to school, I studied information systems. I came home and I got a job and I absolutely hated it. I was not prepared for, I guess, life in the real world, life in the corporate IT sector. So I left for a period of time. And then I got an opportunity to come back into the technology space, but in a different role. And I think it's really important that when we encourage our young people, especially our young women who are interested in studying technology, it's important for us to let them know that there isn't just any one avenue for technology. You know, people go to school and they think, I have to be a network engineer, I have to be a software engineer. There are so many opportunities within the technology realm. And I think it took me a few years to finally settle into a space that I actually enjoyed. So all of that to say, there is no one set path. And, you know, as per our discussion earlier, I think that having it all is fluid. It's different for every individual because happiness is fluid. Your version of happiness is completely different from mine. So I think it's important that as we are encouraging our young people, especially our young women, to take on these roles in, you know, what's considered a predominantly male space, to make it their own, to have their own voice, to be open to trying different things before they find what their niche is. I think that's really important.
For sure. Thank you. Absolutely. And now I'd like to just turn our attention a little bit more towards entrepreneurship. I know a few of us are or have been in a situation where they wanted to turn a hobby or a passion into a full-time endeavor, and usually technology plays a big role in that. I don't think you can get away from it, and I don't think you'd want to actually. So the next question has to do with just that. When did you, in your view, or all of you, when did you find or determine the moment where, okay, this is the time where this hobby of mine can go public and can be monetized and can start as a company, as a business?
I can jump in with that. So I like to describe entrepreneurship as the hardest work you'll ever love because it is incredibly challenging. And I remember the highest highs and the lowest lows could be in the same 24 hours. So it's not for the faint of heart. That's why, you know, PerSHEverance is a good theme for this, because being an entrepreneur, you really have to be tenacious and resilient. But it can be a lot of fun too. And I remember, you know, I was working at Google and there was an idea that had sort of been germinating. And it got to the point where every night and every weekend, I couldn't stop working on it. And I was so passionate about it, like I was having trouble sleeping. And I think that's when you know. I think when you become so obsessed with an idea and it fills you with so much spark and so much fire that you're, you know, either willing to leave a job or you're willing to take the big leap, the risk, because it's a lot of risk to become an entrepreneur. And it's, you know, it's when the idea really speaks to you, inspires you, motivates you, and in some ways consumes you, because you need that level of passion to do entrepreneurship. Like, to be an entrepreneur full time, you really should love what you're doing, because it is not bound to the normal Monday through Friday work week. You'll probably work harder than you ever have. But you're also working hard for something that you care about, that you're passionate about, and that you own, you know, and hopefully keep a lot of your ownership over the course of your venture. So I think that's a big indicator. And for me, it was a little scary, to leave a job I actually really liked to go do something that was just the big unknown. And it was hard. And it was a team of all women founders. So that made it like 10 times harder. And fundraising and everything else. So I think if you have something like that, that's really lighting you up, then do it.
Marilyn, would you like to share your experience? I know that you're carrying both at the same time. You haven't
Right
to the other. Yeah, but I'd like
certainly. So like Sloan, while my business is not a tech-based business, we do use technology to streamline processes and just help to create efficiencies. And is there room for improvement? Absolutely. There's always room for improvement. But we do use technology in some capacity. I mean, it's become second nature for everybody in society now. So, if you were to shy away from it, it would kind of be a bit absurd. Also, just to kind of piggyback off of something that Sloan mentioned, well done to you for recognizing that you weren't happy initially and making the decision to change, because I think that's a very scary prospect for a lot of people. Once they recognize, hey, I don't really like it here, change, it's fine. Change is okay. And the same applies to technology. I saw a comment also in the chat about, being overwhelmed with the pace at which things change. I mean, just take things in bite sizes. You don't have to eat the whole pie at once, and there's lots of opportunity to be fluid and get a taste for, the various facets of technology. You don't have to stick to just one thing.
Yeah, and I think when you mentioned, you can change or you can stop doing something that you don't enjoy. I think some of it has to do with women being risk takers, because you're taking a risk, right? So yeah. I'm doing this thing here that's keeping me stable, and this is what I went to do, where I went to school for, and I studied all these years, but now I'm going to drop it to try and pursue something else. It takes not only conviction, it takes a lot of appetite for risk. And some of us are more risk averse than others, or have more of a risk appetite than others. And at this, I think I'm going to just put a little thought here about turning the hobby into a full-time job. Those of you who know me may know that I like to be the devil's advocate sometimes. So I do have a full-time job, which I love. I work for the government of Bermuda. I'm also a teacher, yoga teacher, right? So I do teach yoga, and I love it as well. Now, I wonder if there are others like me who love the two things equally and want to keep them equally. And for me, they provide some balance, right? So during the day and most evenings and part of the weekend, I'm all up in my head in policy analysis and all of that stuff. And then when I have the opportunity and on the regular schedule, when I'm teaching yoga, it takes me away from my head into my body, and it provides that balance and it brings some mindfulness to my life. So I just wanted to say that we're not all at the stage, or do we want to be at that stage where you have to make a decision, right? Sometimes it's okay to carry both, and that brings some balance.
Yeah, I'm certainly at that place as well. I really enjoy my day job. I love coding. I love, what I do. I feel like I'm making a meaningful contribution. But I also love my business. I love pole dancing. So I'm not really in a space where, I feel like I have to make one decision over the other. And fortunately, I have a phenomenal support system where I'm able to carry and do all the things. So, that's not everybody's reality, and I can appreciate that. And I think some people, I get some sideways glances about, why does she still have her day job? Her business must be suffering. I really just like both.
I get it. I absolutely get it.
I come from the perspective of thinking about what life I want to have. Like, what is the life that I envision for myself? And then I take steps back. So I knew that I wanted to be in emerging tech. So what are the options? Okay, blockchain. I've been curious about blockchain since 2015. Let me look into this a little more. And eventually, my life has become centered around what I do, but I find the balance within that, because my clients are my friends are my clients, and I'm constantly, feeling fulfilled for the work that I am doing. But I also have the balance that I have a social life, unlike my previous corporate life where I did not. It's like I no longer have a battle within myself to do one thing well to what I think is well, and not have any kind of aspect in my personal life, and not make that a priority. Now I have the sense of like, what is a priority for me, what works for me, and then I make it work that way, to feel that balance and to feel like you're still being impactful, you're still making money, and you're still having a great time, because then you can continue to be the best version of yourself that way, in my opinion.
Yeah. And some of it has to do with another theme that I heard consistently today, which is just being kind to yourself, right? We have that ambition and the drive and the multitasking, and we have all that, and it's great. But how about at a certain time, I find that at one point or another, we step back and we say, okay, well, once you get to a certain level of maturity, especially professional maturity, you realize I may not be presenting the best part of me because I'm so stressed doing all these things and doing them well and doing them to perfection. But how about what makes me happy? And so sometimes you get the nice formula where your work and the people you work with are actually either family or friends, and it provides you with that. And otherwise, you have to kind of deliberately say, yeah, maybe I won't be working all these hours, or maybe I want to pursue this specific specialization, or just kind of cater a little bit more to what calls you, as opposed to what you think you were called to 20 years ago when you went to school. And that definitely has to do with just being kind and compassionate to oneself. Kalina, hi, your video's on.
And answers for you. So we have someone that asked, and I think Marilyn touched on it earlier, for anyone, do you ever get overwhelmed with that pace that technology seems to be advancing? I don't know if anybody else wanted to answer it. I know Marilyn had touched on it earlier. Okay, then we have, how did you approach a sponsor type relationship, and I guess trust someone to speak on your behalf accurately and respectfully? And that's for Rachel.
So the thing about a sponsor is that you don't always know what's being said, right? The point is that, it's someone who will vouch for you when you're not in the room. And that's usually when decisions about hiring and promotions and placement take place. And so it's not something you can necessarily engineer. But what I would say is, try and cultivate relationships, with executives, with decision makers. And if there's a way that you can have visibility so they can see your work, you can share your ideas, and you can demonstrate to them how capable you are. And also, try and foster that relationship of trust. Those are things that really help. There's no guarantee. But what I would say, in my case, I can think of a few instances where, because I had a relationship with someone who did trust me, who was a classmate, in fact, they vouched for me at a really critical moment in my career. And then because they vouched for me, someone they trusted vouched for me. And so it kind of takes on a life of its own in some ways. Like, again, there's no guarantee, but I think this old adage of, keep your head down and work hard and then people will notice, that's so not true. It's absolutely not true. I mean, they will take your work, they'll be happy you worked hard, and then they'll pass you over for promotion again and again and again. So no, you actually have to build your own brand. You have to develop your relationships. You need to be, I hate to say it, in some ways a good self-promoter, because if you don't share with the world what you're working on and why it's great, no one else is going to. So, you have to be the one who's your champion first, and then hopefully find allies who align with you, who agree with you, who respect you and appreciate what you're doing. And that's actually how you get promoted. It's not because you put your head down, you worked hard, and you were in a silo. That is just fiction. And they say that probably so that they don't have to promote women. They say that so that they keep you quiet so that they can promote their buddies. And that's real talk. But the truth is, if you want to go far, you need to cultivate those relationships. You do need to prove yourself, but in a way that kind of fosters the bigger picture, right? So if you're aligning with some larger goal, if there's a big initiative at the company and you want to volunteer and put your hat in the ring. These are all great ways to gain visibility. And it's not by putting your head down and just working hard and just doing your job. That's not the way to do it. Working hard is great, and doing a great job is awesome. But people have to know you're doing it in order for you to be not just vouched for, but actually for you to be proactively sought out. You really need to foster the relationships across the board and let people know what you're doing and how good you are.
Thank you, Rachel. So our next question is, how do you recommend bridging the generational gap when we might be supporting or guiding young women/young people who may actually have more experience with all the different tech media? How do we keep up? And that's for anyone. Go ahead.
Getting a lot of discussion. Sorry. So one of the programs that we have at the Economic Development Department is the Cyber Tips program, where we go into the schools and we have a digital citizenship and awareness program that we run with the middle and high school students. The number one complaint that we hear from the kids is that nobody ever listens to me. So I think part of the answer to this question is to actually listen to what they have to say, allow them to guide you. And we have a seniors event as well. And the first thing I always tell our seniors or ask them is, do you have any grandkids? Because your grandchildren are going to be the ones that are going to come and tell you how to fix your remote, or what to do, what you need to do on your iPad, or how to fix your computer. I can't tell you enough how many times my son has been called by my granny, actually, to say, she calls it Netflix. My Netflix is broken. Or anything simple like that. So these kids are born with technology ingrained in their fingertips. And as technology continues to evolve, they grow with it. So while a lot of the older generation are still trying to figure things out, these kids are creating what's happening next. So it's really important that we involve them in the conversation, because they are the future of technology. They are the future entrepreneurs. And so if you have a question about technology, please speak to your resident teenager. I am positive they can give you the answer.
Yeah. And I just want to add to that. I have younger founders that I work with. They're a lot younger than me, actually, but they're geniuses. And I know that they have a grand vision and they're very good at some aspect of technology, but they may lack in others, because nobody's perfect and they all have their strengths. And the areas that they lack, I may be able to complement them with. So I collaborate with them to help them advance whatever it is that they're working on. But that's how you stay plugged in, because you'll learn from them and they'll learn from you. And that's kind of the future, from my perspective, collaborating with all sorts of people, young, old, and female, male, and all kinds.
For sure. And may I just say to Deidre, if you're still here, I think you're getting the answer to your question about being overwhelmed with so much technology out there. There's usually a way to gain some understanding. So what I would recommend is always ask the question. I have several degrees, but none of them has to do with technology. But I'm somehow in tech, and I'm somehow surrounded with people who know more about it than I ever will, including my 19-year-old. That's true. And so you ask the questions and you make your contacts. Bermuda is a small place, and I love the nurturing part about it. And it seems like entrepreneurship is in our DNA. And so when you're starting something, when you start thinking about an idea, whether it's a business, a small startup, or whether even if it's a charitable organization, you will always find answers, as we say in the EDD, right in the room. There's enough of us that know so much about so much that it's just important to not get too overwhelmed, but to actually reach out to your tribe, reach out to your contacts, to your network, and find the answers.
All right, ladies, thank you so much for joining our tech session. It has been an amazing talk. Sometimes when you think about tech, you think it's over your head. And I think that you ladies brought a different aspect to us. something that we can all learn from and be able to relate to. So I want to thank you all for joining us. I also especially want to thank Maria and Rachel. They are our international speakers. So thank you for accepting the invitation, as well as my Bermudians. Thank you for joining us as well. Next up, we are going to have a pitch competition. And if anyone was able to join the rocket pitch competition that was held last week, Tuesday at Bacardi, it was an amazing event. And all the female pitchers that pitched during the competition are going to be played their videos. So it's going to be a 5-minute video of each of the business. And then there's going to be a poll afterwards. And you guys get to vote on who is going to be the first, second, and third place winner of the pitch competition. And so if you look at your schedule, if you head over to the header that says pitch competition, you will be able to join and watch these amazing businesses evolve, and then help one of them to get funding and things to help start theirs. So thank you very much again, ladies, women of tech, and looking forward to connecting with you in the future. Bye, guys. All right. Don't forget, head over to the pitch competition.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.